Good afternoon. Welcome to Focus on Core Competency and Partner for the Rest. Today, we'll do a condensed version of our cohort workshop to teach you how to enhance impact by focusing on your competitive advantage via compassionate competition while partnering with others to best address the unmet needs of those you serve. This strategy and handbook was initially designed for organizations that are having to cut back their budget from the end of the stimulus funding and cuts in federal funding. However, we have learned that this strategy is also effective for organizations that are doing well financially to enhance their impact and their competitive advantage. The steps to undergo this first is conducting a situation analysis. A key part of that process, best understanding your core strengths unique to others. After the internal assessment comes the competitive analysis, looking at your competitors, and we'll explain what we mean by that later. After we've done that assessment, then knowing what you do well and what your competitors do uniquely well, then you are able to more accurately determine and then begin to communicate your competitive advantage, your unique value proposition. Next step is then looking at the strategies in all aspects of your organization that must be implemented, including needed capacity to be able to maintain this competitive advantage into the future. Once you determine what you do well and your unique competitive advantage, then proactively establishing more robust partnerships with your competitors and other organizations to best meet the unmet needs of those you serve. And then to maintain this competitive advantage, look at continuous improvement, including assessing appropriate opportunities that come your way. We have this conversation a lot with nonprofits who say, well, we really don't compete. They do have a point. Nonprofits do not compete and have direct competitors similar to for-profit organizations. However, the reality is there are finite resources. So you do compete with similar perceived nonprofits in your sector and or geography for funders, clients, staff, board, stakeholders, and the general public. So we recommend what we call compassionate competition. The best way to do this is what we call compassionate competition, where your organization works diligently in the pursuit of excellence and achievement, while at the same time demonstrating empathy and support for others, including your competitors. First stage in the process is situation analysis. We're all aware of a traditional SWOT analysis looking at your internal strengths and areas needing improvement and external opportunities and threats. This strategy focuses more on your internal strengths, the things you do well, and especially the things that you do well that you think are uniquely different than your competitors. What do we look at? First, what makes your mission and vision unique? How is your role in the community unique from others? How are your programs and services distinct from those offered from similar organizations? What outcomes do you produce from your programs and services that are unique? Do you have specialized knowledge, skills, or track record that sets you apart? Are your staff different in the way that they work with the clients than others? Finances and funding. Really looking at this, is your funding sustainable and diverse? So percentage of your budget coming from variety of funding sources. And how is your fiscal management unique? Communication and marketing. How does the community, especially those served, perceive you different from others? And how do you communicate better to the community and stakeholders? Operations and infrastructure. What investments have you made unique to producing better efficiency and effectiveness in your organization, especially looking at technology? And partnerships and collaborations. What is your values? What is your approach to partnering and collaborating? Demographics. Who are the people you serve? What are their demographics? Do you serve unique audience compared to those you compete with? Needs. What are the most pressing needs? What do they value in a nonprofit? What are they looking for? And most important, what are their unmet needs? Knowing some characteristics about them, including, most importantly, their satisfaction with the work that you deliver. And then looking at some key behavioral insights. What are the key motivators and or their challenges and barriers to accessing the needed services they have? And how do they prefer to be communicated with? After analyzing and better understanding those you serve, then spend some time to look at the effectiveness of your evaluation program, your logic model. Key part of this is effectively using data to be able to track your outcomes, not your outputs, and then having a system that uses this data, this information, for continuous improvement in how you deliver your programs and services. Next is to analyze your current programs and services via the mission versus margin matrix. On the vertical is the potential for mission-based outcomes. Below, low impact, upper, high impact. And the horizontal is your potential of fundraising and or profitability. Quadrant 1, the hard quadrant. These are the programs and services that produce the greatest impact and outcomes and most aligned to your mission. However, they do not generate profit and or require extensive efforts in fundraising. Quadrant 2, the stop quadrant. Here, it's low impact, low alignment with mission, at the same time, costly, not profitable. Quadrant 3 is a high impact, but also profitable. And then lastly, quadrant 4, the cash tree, low mission alignment and impact, but generates cash, generates profits. The goal in this process, this strategy, is to being able to work at enhancing, improving the efficiency in quadrant 1 programs, stopping, reducing, and or possibly harvesting, transferring these programs to another organization that can better deliver that program. Look for ways to grow, to scale the successful programs in quadrant 3, and look to grow quadrant 4 and utilize the cash and profits generated from that quadrant, things such as earned income, to being able to help fund those in quadrant 1. We recognize mapping your programs on the matrix is somewhat subjective. However, some things to look at, especially on the mission side, where to be able to map it out, is the program's alignment with your core mission values and goals. And are you good at that? Are you good at delivering that program and services? And the one we always look at, and it's almost the why of your nonprofit, is what would happen if those programs went away? Would your constituents, those you serve, able to go across the street to another agency, or would they have nowhere to go to meet this? So first, map out your assessment of your current programs. The size of the bubble is the percentage of your total budget for that program. So the larger the percentage, the larger the bubble. Again, this is subjective, but the goal here is for you to create a visual, and we found this very effective in determining your focus, what you do best, and how to enhance that moving into the future. Once you've mapped out the current, then it's plan, what you plan to do. And again, going back to those things that we talked about, key parts of the strategy is to make those in quadrant 1 more effective, more efficient. Look to decrease, decline, and harvest quadrant 2. Look to scale, expand quadrant 3. Also look to scale and or simply grow quadrant 4, and utilizing that cash to fund programs in quadrant 4 to help fund and expand programs in quadrant 1. Let's look at a visual to illustrate this. Here is a hypothetical organization. Here is their current programs mapped out on mission versus margin. And then utilizing our strategy, this was their plan. As you can see, from looking currently to plan, that we want to be able to move all programs in 1 and 2 to being more profitable. Looking at reducing in quadrant 2, expanding in quadrant 1, by again moving to be more efficient and having some funding from quadrant 3 and 4, and then expanding both quadrant 4 and 3, and looking the possibility for quadrant 4 of making it more impactful to the mission. After your internal analysis, and you feel confident and you know what you do uniquely best and changes you want to make more impactful and sustainable, then need to complete a competitor analysis. First on this is defining your goals. Obviously we're trying to find a niche between what you do different than others, but then also from this analysis, what else are you looking to improve within your organization in addition to program and knowing your niche? Fundraising, outreach, finances, fundraising, etc. Because we found from this competitor analysis, not only does it help you to better define your niche, you can also learn best practices that they're utilizing in different areas of the organization that could be engaged in your nonprofit. Identify 4 to 5 organizations in the same sector or geography that will be seen as competitors. If you're having a challenging time trying to figure out what these competitors are, check with the key foundations funders in your community. They do a really good job of being able to see what they perceive to be similar organizations. Gather information on each of these and analyze the key areas, which we'll show you next. Compare their strengths compared to your strengths. Then, using this data, develop strategies to improve what you do uniquely better, and or, as I mentioned before, some best practices your competitors are using that you want to engage in your organization. Key information to be able to track, which you can easily get from GuideStar, 990s, websites, etc., are mission and vision, their key goals. What is their logic model? What are the key outcomes? What key desired change are they trying to make? Who is their target audience? Who are they serving? Their programs and services. What you think they do uniquely different than others. What are their key revenue? What are their assets? What is their financial situation? What are their key funding sources? Are they diverse? Are they more diverse than you? And what are their key marketing and communication strategies that you perceive, and the main venues or ways that they do in terms of outreach and or marketing? Once you've completed your internal analysis and your competitor analysis, then you're ready to establish, to clarify, and to communicate your distinct competitive advantage with what we call a unique value proposition that communicates how you uniquely address specific community needs, the unique benefits / outcomes of your work, and what makes you uniquely different from others that are perceived to be similar. That is clearly aligned with your core strengths and addresses the needs of your target audience. Part of this also for internal is best understanding what are the key elements of your nonprofit in all areas, not just programs and services, that helps to create, deliver, and then sustain that unique niche. And what you must do to continue this. We think that the nonprofit sector as a whole is very humble. And we do not want you to boast. However, we do feel it important to go out and be proud and proudly communicate what you do uniquely different. What is your competitive advantage? Doing that in a compassionate fashion. We highly recommend you meeting with those partners that were in your competitor analysis to discuss what you see is your unique value proposition, and then looking at ways to better partner, to better address the unmet needs of those you serve, and or being able to address the areas needing improvement, not your strengths within your organization. Knowing and communicating this competitive advantage is the first step. Then comes the challenge of maintaining that. So taking time to determine how to maintain and how to keep your competitive advantages within your key stakeholders. What strategies, what goals must you implement? Most importantly, what are the resources needed to maintain this advantage? Also look at being future oriented. Will the community still value your advantage in the future? And then also looking at competition. Is there any possibility that some other organization can offer the service more competitively than you do in the future? So determining what you must do in all areas of your organization to maintain this uniqueness, this competitive advantage. And then looking at continuous improvement, including ongoing evaluation. The key is remaining adaptive, staying agile, paying attention to and communicating and engaging those you serve to see their changing needs and circumstances and what else is going on externally that may require you, and then looking at how to continuously adapt, staying agile, continuing to seek feedback from those you serve, and other ways of determining any changes in the external environment that may require you to change your strategies to maintain your edge and or adjust that edge. And maintaining this competitive advantage is communication and marketing. When we first started doing this work, our clients would say, what? We're going to communicate to our key stakeholders that we're cutting back? Isn't that a negative message? Well, yes, it is if you frame it that way. The correct way, the message the proper way to communicate this strategy, that this is not a cutback in impact and services, that this is an opportunity with decreased funding to being able to focus on what you do well and produce the greatest impact. And that part of your planning is when new financial resources are available, that you look to invest in growing these focused and more impactful programs. Every day we see an article or a news story about an organization that says, if you don't fund us right now, we're going to close the doors. In this time of financial challenge and crisis, people understand that your budget's cut back and that your message is, we're paring back to best serve the community, but at the same time, preparing in the future to enhance our impact. So it's an investment in future and impactful growth. mentor of mine said a long time ago that if you are impactful, you are successful and effective, that you're overwhelmed with a plethora of opportunities. And we know that implementing this strategy, that others will then come to you with quote unquote opportunities. We recommend this assessment process to be able to quickly rule out opportunities that do not warrant your time and or resources. Top criteria to look at are, is this opportunity aligned? Does it support your mission and your outcomes? Is it doable? Do you have the capacity now to successfully implement? Is there a true need in the community? Is there an opportunity for this to be financially sustainable? Not just in programming, but also operational funding, including administration. Is there local support for this opportunity? And is this low risk? So for instance, it doesn't work out, that it does not negatively impact your organization. And also that you can put a plan in place to properly implement. We were honored to make this condensed presentation on our focus on the core and partner for the rest strategy. We are working to create a much longer and detailed online webinar, and we would also be honored to implement and customize this strategy for your organization.